All right, the first tip that I want to give you for working on this orthogonal dot page is to think of these dots as if you were going to draw a cube. So all of these drawings that you are going to do today, you are essentially connecting the dots. And if we connect these series of dots right here, you'll notice that we get a cube. And if we were to add a little bit of shadow, you can do that with lines. You can fill some of it in really nice and dark, because on this cube you would have 3 sides visible, one of them getting most of the light. All right, so I want you to think of these drawings you're going to do today in terms of making it up of a bunch of these cubes here. All right, so if we look at this very first one right here, I'm going to imagine that this right here is one cube stacked upon a second cube. This to me looks like another cube and another cube. So if I were going to start with just this shape right here, I'm connecting the dots. So I'm imagining this as one cube, 2 cubes, so one line, second line here. All right, this is going at an angle, 1, 2, 3. Ignore these little dashes down here. They don't really match up with the actual number of cubes. So I have 1, 2, 3. This one goes back up. This one over, I'm imagining about 2. 1, 2. Goes up 1. And connects. And there I have made this one shape right there. All right? I am using the dots to help guide me make this 3-dimensional shape here. All right? So now I'm going to look at these 2 sections right here. This could be looked at as a long rectangular, 3-dimensional rectangle here. So I have this line. I am imagining, see how these kind of connect up on the edge here? So if I imagine this looks like it's more than 1, so I'm going to imagine this is 1, 2, and 3. All right? So there's a little bit of a gap. So if this is going to be 1, 2, and 3, we're going to make this one the same length. All right? So that's kind of what this guide right here. This is empty space, but it's kind of showing you that the width on this form is the same. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Comes down on the back so that these 2 are parallel to each other, but all you have to do is connect the dots. Connect that right there. Okay? Then I have this piece matches right there. It's down and across right here. So now I have this whole section and this part right here. So now I'm going to look at this side that's going to match here. And again, all I'm doing is connecting the dots. There's this line. This is the empty space. 1, it's like 1 cube here. 2, I'm going to treat this as another cube. So I'm coming down 1 cube here. 1, 2, 1, 2. I'm going up 1, 2, 1, 2. This we're going to treat as a whole cube. I know it looks a little bit smaller, but we're using the dots that we have here. So 1, 2. All right, now if I start to add a little bit of the shadow that you see in the drawing, it's going to help make this look like it's looking a little more 3-dimensional, even though I'm not quite finished yet. All right, so we have this space right here that's kind of matching up with this. We already mentioned this was an empty space as 1. We said this looked larger than 1, so it's 2, basically 2 by 2. So 2 by 2. Make this go across. This is the side that's all in shadow. All right, finish this off, treating it as just a single block that is 2 long. All right, and then we look at where this one ended. It ended right here, and all I have to do is connect the dots again. So I've connected those dots. Now I'm looking for where the circles are. And if you look real closely, these are not actual circles. They are more oval shaped. I'm going to put an oval shape right here. Put a little value like you're looking into it. This oval shape is right about here. Has a little value in it. I've added my other values. Okay, and this was example number 1. Okay, so that would be how I would approach drawing this one. Now the first several here, 1 through 4, these are all pretty much just working with the cubes. Now this one's going to ask you to kind of take a little bit of a rounded edge. So you would just be rounding some of those corners, and by drawing that line with a curve on it, that's going to help make it look like it's rounded as well. So one of the more difficult ones that I'm going to show you, we're going to do number 10 next. All right, so number 10 here has this triangular shape. So the first thing I want to show you is how you would approach putting this triangle in. All right, so again, we're going to kind of look at the spacing on here. So if I were to say this was 1 cube and 1 cube at the bottom, so let's just think about this triangle, and 1 cube up. So if I were to start with what were a actual cube here. Okay, now the part I'm starting with is this triangle. You'll notice it has this little line dividing it in the middle. Okay, so this is the line dividing it in the middle. To make the triangle, I then just connect. All right, so I'm still using the dots, and then I can get rid of, and I don't have a very good eraser on this one. Let's try this one, eraser. Okay, so here's my triangle to work with. And I can start with that right there. All right. Now, these start to ask you to evaluate portions of the cube. So you'll notice that this is definitely not a full cube here. So the easiest thing here, I think, would be to look at this as if it were half. All right. So if we look at this as 1 cube right here, and then part of 1. So I'm going to move it up just a little bit. But notice how these lines, you want to keep them as if you're connecting the dots, but just moving up a little bit. So I'm still going to treat this as a cube. I'm still going to work within some of the lines. They're just going to be a little bit higher up, parallel to each other. All right? This line right here is parallel to that triangle line. All right? This little bit of a line is going with the other. So these dots are aligned with the orthogonal. Okay, and the orthogonal line, when we talk about perspective in a few weeks, the orthogonal lines are the ones that are going to line up with the vanishing points. And they're the ones that start to make perspective actually look like it has that three-dimensional look to it. So I want you to see, even though we're not using vanishing points here, these orthogonal lines line up with these diagonal dots here. All right, so there's my triangle. These dots are going in this direction. This is about the length of 1 cube here. Remember, we were kind of using parts of, we shifted this one just a little bit. Okay, this top part of the triangle is still lining up with the dots here. Just like we had this small space right here, we're going to look at, and if you remember, we had this kind of, I'll put the dotted lines back in there. Okay, so if we're looking at this in terms of it being a bigger cube, if we go completely out for 2, okay, these 2 connections here, that's too far past it. So we're going to say that that triangle was right about here. All right, so this was the depth of that. Okay, so this would be the back of that triangle. Okay. And if you imagine where that end is, it's kind of right back over here. Imagine drawing that line there. Okay. So you can see that by the time we've gotten to 10 here, these are getting a little bit more difficult when they're putting these angles in here. All right, so we have this little notch. And you'll notice these lines right here, they are parallel to the edges of that triangle. So here's our notch, but this part of the line is going in the same direction of those orthogonal dots here. Okay, so let me get rid of some of these extra things we use to find the edges. So this is the far side. We could have actually made that a little bit longer. I'm going to put it about halfway here. And make our notch in that triangle. Okay, but this part of the line right here has to line up in the direction of those dots. Okay, and then this part of the line, this is just like this cube right up here. It's lining up in the same direction. Okay, and then we have this back part of it. And again, I'm imagining this is like about 1.5 cubes. So this is taking up part of it. We're extending this line here. And it's going in the same direction as the dot. So imagine that the dots were actually right here and right here. And we were connecting them. Okay, and so this was 1. If we extended that up, so I actually went too far. I'm going here. Imagine our dots again. And then the only thing that's left to do on this one is to add our kind of oval shapes. All right, and this would be number 10. So, I am looking for you to be doing your best to try and figure these out using the dots to help put these diagonal lines and go. These diagonal lines should look like they are all going in the same direction here, and they end up being parallel from each other. All right, so that is going to play a big part when we start talking about perspective. So my suggestion, start with these in order. Those of you that finished several of them and did well, you just pick up with where you left off. The ones when you get down to these down here at the very bottom, they're pretty intricate, and you'll notice that they've already placed a cube-like or rectangular prism looking piece in here, and it's asking you to figure out how to get these other flattened surfaces that don't actually make up a cube. They're sliced off. All right, so it will take a little bit of work and a little bit of imagination to figure out how that's going to work. So just do your best. All right, I look forward to seeing what you've taken care of.